Yashrala Shalom. All praises to the Most High, Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect. And I want to get into this video. This has been a topic that I've been talking on my channel, I don't know, since like maybe 2021 when me and brother used to do live streams. This is something that most economists and the vast majority of the average common folk people are starting to really understand, and that is inflation, which really just goes back to the de-dollarization and the value of the US dollar constantly going down due to the infinite printing that the US government and the Federal Reserve have done within the last, 100 years. But if we really want to hone in, I would say the last 20 to 25 years, around the time of George W. Bush Jr. And, we're seeing the effects of it constantly. And I saw this. It says U.S. inflation rose in June as Trump's tariffs start to show in prices. Because again, with the stopping of all these different tariffs on China, Japan, European Union, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Trump is trying to use this as a bargaining tool. But for those of y'all who read in between the lines, what's really going on is that not only is America destroying its own dollar, but all the other countries around the earth are helping to destroy the American dollar. This is something that I had seen, I forgot where, I think it was on Instagram, but it says a $100,000 salary in January 2020 has the same buying power as $124,353 in April 2025. The dollar lost 25% value in 5 years. So basically, if you had a $5 bill, it would be worth $3.75 today if you had that same $5 bill in 2020, which is crazy because that's around a 6.5% devaluation of the dollar every year. And you got to remember, that's not talking about tariffs. That's not talking about, it is talking about the prices going up, but they call it price gouging. And essentially people are just scrambling to try to maintain the reality of the lifestyle that they've known for their entire life. And the reason why I want to do this video is because I haven't touched on this scripture before, but this is actually prophesied in the Bible. One of the main curses that the Most High would place upon a nation is famine as well as inflation. Let's go to the book of Revelation. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 6 and verse. We're going to go to verse 5, but just for y'all to have context, these are speaking about the 4 horsemen. And these are all curses that Yahawashi would open, in which there would be seals that would be unlocked in the spiritual realm that would cause many different things to happen on the earth in our existence. Whether that's through conquering, rulership, whether that's through war, killing, destruction. And the main one I want to focus on is the 3rd seal, that being famine. So verse 5, it says, "And when he had opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd beast say, 'Come and see.' And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand." So for those of y'all who understand what the balance represents all throughout the scriptures, it represents money. Let's go to Proverbs 11 and 1. So it says, "A false balance is an abomination to the Most High, but a just weight is his delight." And I know many brothers use this to speak about balance within your life, which is true. But also when you look at the root of this specific scripture, it's talking about balancing, your currency for trade, because they didn't used to have paper dollars. They would have coins of silver, coins of gold, bronze, or whatever it was as an exchange, because you would always exchange X for a merchandise, right? So through the fiat currency that's been printing for the last centuries, the way that we exchange money is a little bit different, but the concept is still the same, right? So let's go back. So Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 5, it says, "I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil in the wine." So when you read this, you think a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny. You don't really understand what it means. But I've studied this in previous years, and when you look at it from the ancient Greek, the penny and the penny right here were actually the Roman currencies. So let's see. Let me see if I can find it in this specific translation. If not, I'll find it on Google. Alright, so this is right here. It's called the denarian, of Latin origin, penny. Denarius equals containing 10. It says a Roman silver coin in New Testament time. It took its name from its beginning equal to 10 asses or 10 donkeys. A number after 217 BC increased to 16, about 3.898 grams. It was the principal silver coin of the Roman Empire. From the parable of the laborers in the vineyard, it was seen that the denarius was then the ordinary pay for a day's wage. So this is just the Roman equivalent of what, I don't know, we could say a $10 bill or $20 bill. It doesn't really matter, because you're going to understand the reason why it's written in here. Because essentially, as you go back, the main title of this specific verse is speaking of famine. And we all understand when it comes to a famine, obviously things become scarce. And as things become scarce, what happens to the prices? They typically inflate. They go up because the value of what you're trying to buy with goes down, or the supply goes down, so the demand goes up. Just like with COVID, when you had everybody buying toilet paper, it's $20 for toilet paper when it was typically, I don't know, $4. Meat was $30 when it's typically $7 or $8. So this is actually talking about inflation when you read in between the lines. And just so y'all, brother, and you can look at this when you guys do like Bible study tools, or like you try to Google. I don't know the exact people that I used to read before, but I would just look at different Bible studies and Bible guides. And this is what this was talking about. This was talking about inflation. And this is a page that really speaks into it, right? So this is enduringword.com, Bible commentary. That's what it was, Bible commentary. So it says, I'll read it again. It says, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. The scales symbolized the need to carefully measure and ration food. This speaks of a time of scarcity. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because people are complaining about pricing. Why is food so expensive? It's because these things are becoming more scarce. When you understand the scriptures and you understand the plagues that are going to come in the book of 2nd Esdras, in the book of Jeremiah, in the book of Ezekiel, in the book of Revelation, one of the main things that it's talking about how people would not be able to afford to live. So we're starting off when it comes to the monetary system, but it's going to eventually translate and evolve to a barter system where people are not going to be able to have water, not going to be able to have food in abundance like they did before. Let's go to 2nd Esdras chapter 16. All right, this is 2nd Esdras chapter 16 verse 22. It says, for many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine. So how can people on the earth perish of famine if every time you go in the grocery store you have nothing but food galore? But again, what's happening to the food? It has less nutrition. The food is more genetically modified than it's ever been before. They have to do all these different cloud seedings to even have water come down from the skies to water the crops, because the land is going through all type of spiritual curses and droughts. So essentially, no matter what man is trying to do to feed itself, if the Most High is not blessing the land, it's going to lead to famine, regardless of what you try to come up with and invent. It's always going to fall on itself. The Most High is not going to allow you to bless yourself without his intervention. It never works like that. So it says, they will perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. So the two curses is speaking of famine, and is speaking of war, death, anarchy, civil war, whatever it may be. And it says, and the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall be no man to comfort them. For the earth shall be wasted, and the city shall be cast down. Now let's go down. Salakia. I didn't even read verse 21. It says, behold, victuals shall be so cheap. Victuals is just goods. Shall be so cheap upon the earth that they will think themselves to be in good case. And even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. So when you see things like this, this is essentially the Most High allowing these powers, Trump, Biden, Obama, George Clinton, George W. Bush II, to destroy the dollar, because that's essentially bringing in prophecy where this land, Babylon the Great, the Roman Empire reincarnated, the beast whose deadly wound was healed, to essentially go through these different curses, because the Most High is going to bring all these different plagues to the land. So going back right here, it says B, a quart of wheat for a denarius. When you go back to Revelation 6:6, when it says penny, just put denarius. So it says a quart of wheat for a denarius and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. It says these prices are about 12 times higher than normal. It means that it would cost a day's wage to buy the ingredients for a loaf of bread. This describes a time of famine when life will be reduced to the barest necessities. So essentially, one of the plagues in the end times is that the wages that you would typically be able to pay are essentially going to be so out of this world that you're going to work all day to only be able to afford a meal. Let alone your car, let alone your Netflix subscription, let alone your girl getting a pedicure, let alone you having a vacation house. And when y'all brothers understand what the role of AI is and how AI is going to force out these entry jobs and everybody's going to be a dependent gig worker or servant for those different gig platforms, people are going to be unemployed and hoping for any way for them to be able to buy food, because Trump can't stop inflation. He can't reverse inflation. He can cause disinflation, which is slowing down the amount that the dollar is being devalued, which is what it's speaking right here. It says inflation remains far below the peak seen 3 years ago when price increases reached as high as 9%. But he can't stop inflation because he can't stop divine prophecy, point blank period. So we'll keep going. It says, we often see great famine in the world today, yet fewer people suffer from hunger today than 100 years ago. However, understanding the world's precarious ecological balance, it would not take much to plunge many into the kind of scarcity and inequity mentioned here. So this is a part of the destruction of the dollar, because when you look at the denarius, the ancient Roman silver coin, and just do a simple understanding of what happened, right? I'll just look at it right here. It says, how much is a denarius in Yahawashi's time? It says, while the value of a denarius fluctuated, one biblical reference to the coin suggested at the time it was worth 1 day's labor, or about $50 in today's money. Now, I looked up what happened to the denarius. I got a quick AI overview. Y'all brothers, if you want to do serious research, y'all can. But as you can see right here, what does this coin look like? Don't it look like a quarter? Again, we're living in the Roman Empire reincarnated. Again, there is nothing new under the sun. The same thing that caused Rome to be destroyed 2,000 years ago, very similar curses are going to come upon America, aka Babylon the Great, and the Western world in general, because that is the Most High essentially transferring rulership from the wicked, from Esau, eventually to Jacob, which we understand, but we got to go through these birthing pains. But right here it says the Roman denarius, initially a nearly pure silver coin, gradually declined in silver content and eventually was replaced due to debasement. What does that sound like? De-dollarization, right? Because the pure silver, the type of coin that they were using to exchange, they had to do what? They had to make it weaker because they were doing this. Watch. It says it was replaced by the Ananias and then the Folus, marking the end of the denarius as the primary Roman currency. What does this sound like, brothers? Y'all see Bitcoin hitting new heights, XRP, Ethereum hitting new heights? What does this sound like, brothers? This literally sounds like what we're going through now, because again, this is how all empires fall. The destruction of their currency through what? Let's go right here. Debasement. It says, over time, Roman emperors reduced the silver content of the denarius to finance wars. Okay, so what wars, America? You had Vietnam, you had Korea, you had the Persian Gulf War, you had Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation War on Terror. You have all these proxy wars that they're funding. Okay, makes a lot of sense. It says to finance wars and state expenses. That's why Trump is trying to cut back on state expenses like Medicaid and things like that, because he understands this is what's going to destroy the economy. But he himself is further destroying the economy. It says this practice known as debasement involves reducing the amount of silver in the coin while increasing the amount of base metals like bronze. So the modern equivalent would be when the Federal Reserve prints billions and billions and billions of dollars whenever there's a financial collapse, whenever they need to bail out the government during C-19 pandemics. These are the things that they do. And this shows you why America cannot be restored. Why if you believe that the image of America is going to be restored, you're going against what the scriptures say. You're going against the Most High's will. Okay? So right here, consequences. It says, as the silver content decreased, the value of the denarius also decreased, leading to inflation. Prices for goods and services increased, impacting the economy. Erosion of trust. The debasement eroded public confidence in the currency and the Roman economy. And this right here is going to sound very, very particular because I looked this up before I did this video, and this is from July 1st. It says, why is the US dollar falling by record levels in 2025? Sell-off linked to unpredictable and unfunded economic policies which threaten the safe haven role of the US dollar. Because let's be honest, the vast majority of people on earth put their trust in dollar, which is created by men. It makes sense, right? So I'll go right here. It says the US dollar had its worst first 6 months of the year since 1973. As President Donald Trump's economic policies have prompted global investors to sell their greenback holdings, threatening the currency's safe haven status. And again, if you brothers or sisters, whoever's listening, you don't fully see the picture, I pray the Most High gives you greater discernment. Because when you look at how the policies have been going, they had 0% interest rate, kicked the can down the road from the time of Obama and Bush in 2007 all the way through to 2016. Then 2017, they rose it up around 2014, 2016, give or take. And then they dropped it back down. And the thing that Trump's doing to destroy the economy, lowering taxes, but not decreasing spending. Stupidest economic move long-term you could ever do for a country. And the craziest thing that this dude is about to do, he's trying to get Jerome Powell to lower interest rates to 1%. I don't even want to go too deep into it, but let's just say in 2020 and 2021, when the interest rate was at 1% or 0.5%, why do you think inflation was so high? Because the lower the percentage of the interest rates, you have short-term economic growth because people borrow more debt, but you don't have anything to wedge against the devaluation of your dollar. I know if you brothers aren't really into like the financial policies, this may be a little bit more complicated, but when you brothers do research, you'll start to understand this. So everything that Trump is doing, from tariffs to trying to obviously lowering taxes, to trying to lower interest rates, he's gonna put the final nail in the coffin to accelerate America's de-dollarization and economic collapse than any other president has ever done in U.S. history, bro. He may not be the worst president ever, but these policies is the worst thing that he could do. But to be honest, he has no other option, so he has to do it. But let's keep going. It says the dollar index, which measures the currency strength against a basket of 6 others. The pound, which is the British pound. The euro, the yen, which is, I think, the Japanese dollar, fell 10.8% in the first half of 2025. President Trump's stop-start tariff wars and his attacks that have led to the worries over the independence of the Federal Reserve, because he's basically trying to get Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, out of office because he wants somebody who's going to lower interest rates, which again is going to destroy y'all find out eventually, it's going to happen, but have undermined the appeal of the dollar as a safe bet. Economists are also worried about Trump's big, beautiful tax bill currently under debate in the U.S. Congress, which it got passed, I think, last week. The landmark legislation is expected to add trillions of dollars to the U.S. debt pile over the coming decade and has raised concern about the sustainability of Washington's borrowing, prompting an exodus from the U.S. Treasury market. So all these other merchants all across the world are starting to realize that the US dollar and the US economic situation is getting so bad that we already can predict a huge economic downturn. Instead of us continuing to trade in US dollars, invest in US dollars, and run to US dollars whenever we have any economic troubles, we need to get rid of the dollar. So is it really a safe haven? Is it really a foundation of economic strength like what they try to make it seem like? No, because right here, it says, meanwhile, gold has hit record highs this year on continued buying by central banks worried about devaluation of their dollar asset. So long story short, they know it, and I'm going to be honest, you brothers know it, people in the streets who don't even read the Bible know it. America is on its last leg economically. And once it goes down economically, then it'll go down politically, then it'll go down socio-economically, and then it'll go down physically, because that's when a lot of these wars are going to start, full-fledged wars. So let's get some scriptures, brothers, because this is nothing new. And the Most High gives us these scriptures for the spirit of wisdom, because again, wisdom has been around since the beginning. And there have always been economic collapses, devaluation of currencies, and destruction and transferring of kingdoms. So let's read these, right? Proverbs 11:28. It says, he that trusteth in his riches shall fall, but the righteous shall flourish as a branch. So I'm not sitting here telling y'all to protect yourself against the devaluation of the dollar. I'm not telling y'all to not learn a lot of these tools that can help you keep your job when AI comes to replace it. But all I'm saying is, if the Most High ain't coming first, if the Most High is not the foundation of your plan, he's not going to allow any of it to save you. He don't give a damn how rich you are. Because at the end of the day, you got to be rich in the spirit. You got to believe on him. You can't believe in these false idols. Let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 6. This is 1 Timothy chapter 6 and 7. It says, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare. And what is the specific temptation and snare that's going to trap up a lot of people? When the currency transfers over to a digital currency, Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP, anything in Coinbase or any type of crypto platforms, of course that's going to come with what? The beast system, the mark of the beast, and being fully attached to the wicked satanic agenda system to control you, so you can maintain your riches and fall into your lust. And it says it right here, it says, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil. So when you love the money to the point where you can't resist temptation that's being used with that money, it says what? It's the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through many sorrows. So essentially, again, nothing new under the sun. When Paul wrote this was in what? The 1st century AD? But the same thing is going to happen in the 21st century AD. Now I want to go down and we'll go to 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 17. It says, charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded. Meaning, just because you have riches in a carnal world, don't think yourself to be above the judgment and above what will happen to the other people. It says, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living power, which giveth us richly all things to enjoy. And it's much more important to be rich spiritually than rich financially. I promise you. That's why Mashiach even himself said you cannot serve two masters, which we'll get later. But verse 18, it says that they do good, that they be rich in good works. So when you're doing good and you're doing righteousness and you have good works, you're doing what? Ready to distribute and willing to communicate, laying up in store for themselves a good foundation against the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life. Because that foundation is who? It's Yahawashi. And that foundation is not going to allow you to be moved when all of these these generational millennial events happen. It's going to be crazy when it happens. But Lord willing, y'all brothers can make it through, including myself. But let's go to Matthew and we'll go to chapter 6. So this is Matthew 6 and 19. It says, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust does corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, because that's the only money that's going to be able to save you and pay for your emergencies whenever the physical money is gone away and done away with. So it says, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust does corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. Because nobody can take your spiritual version of Bitcoin or Ethereum. Nobody can go into the heavens and take away what you built up with the Most High, but they can go in on your phone and hack all that. The government too. It says, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And down to verse 24 it says, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve the Most High and Mammon. So just like what Joshua said in the book of Joshua, he said, this day I choose to serve the God of my fathers, because that is what's going to allow you to enter in unto life. Again, I'm not saying y'all brothers can't, keep your mind and make sure you saving money, paying down debts, and doing things to make, life easier for you. Because I would rather y'all to not have no debt than to be a debt slave. But at the end of the day, we're indebted to the Most High through his son Yahawashi. So regardless of whatever your financial situation is looking like, if you got a great opportunity to make money, if you're struggling to make money, you got to make sure that the Most High is in your corner at all times, and you're doing everything to serve him in truth and sincerity, because all of this stuff is going to be gone, and we can see the writing on the wall. So let's go right here, and I'm going to end it. This is Proverbs chapter 13, and we'll go to verse 25. It says, the righteous eateth to the satisfying of his soul, but the belly of the wicked shall want. So a righteous man he's essentially content with what the Most High gives him, and it satisfies his soul. But the belly of the wicked man is going to always want, he's going to always covet, he's going to always try to get more, and that's going to lead him to his own destruction. So let this be, be watchful, because again, it's happening. Every time you go to the store, every time you go to Walmart, every time you go out, it's happening. And may the Most High watch over y'all brothers and y'all sisters. I give all praises to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Until next time, it's the brother Ash Ibad.